John Heilman, I want to bring you in to actually talk a little bit about something that's been breaking over the past 24 hours or so on the political news front. There's a poll out of Montana that showed Steve Bullock, the Democrat there, in a comfortable lead over his Republican incumbent opponent. But you go down the list, and a lot of people are talking about this list. Bullock, 46, Steve Daines, 39. Even though Donald Trump is winning that state by 5 points in the same poll. In Arizona, Mark Kelly is ahead of Republican incumbent Martha McSally. In Maine, Susan Collins' numbers are especially weak there, another Republican incumbent that is endangered. In Colorado, John Hickenlooper, well ahead of Cory Gardner. A huge wave likely coming in Colorado that will sweep away Cory Gardner. We just talked about Montana, Steve Bullock, a great politician, a great governor. He's sort of the great Northwest's version of Joe Manchin. He's been a governor there 2 times. He's won running against the tide, and he wins. He just wins election. North Carolina, Thom Tillis's numbers, the Republican incumbent, are just dreadful. We saw polls this past week that shows Georgia's tight. South Carolina, far tighter than it should be with Lindsey Graham. And even Kentucky, where people always say, well, sure, Mitch McConnell is one of the least popular politicians in America, even in his home state of Kentucky, but he always ends up winning. I'm not so sure that they're feeling quite as confident this year as, say, 6 years ago. I mean, this Senate map suddenly is starting to look blue.
Right. And I think that's exactly right, Joe. And if you're looking for a reason why Donald Trump seems to be panicked right now and why he seems to be panicked in a particular way, which is to risk a potential public health nightmare in the weeks and months to come in order to try a kind of desperate you can only describe it as kind of a Hail Mary pass to sort of say we got to reopen this economy, or regardless of what the costs are in terms of human life. Regardless, we must. Yesterday, that's basically what he was saying was a bunch of people are going to die. I'm going to treat the American people as if they were warriors. Forget about the time when I said I was a wartime president. I'm going to treat them as if they're warriors, as if they're conscripts, and I'm going to send them out there to fight this battle ill-equipped. I don't care. We have to get the economy open. It's the only thing he's thinking about right now because he understands how central that economy is to his reelection prospects. What's driving that for him to make these moves? It's seeing we've talked about it now for the last several weeks, but these numbers, these Senate numbers, are in some ways more troubling for Trump than even his own head-to-head numbers with Joe Biden, which are very bad and trending in the wrong direction. A lot of these, many people thought, the Senate is going to be a really steep uphill climb for Democrats, and it still is. Let's be clear, but it's overwhelmingly obvious now, if you look at the raft of polling you just went through, that the Senate is in real jeopardy for Republicans, and there are 2 factors driving it. One factor is that Joe Biden is at the top of the ticket. One of the reasons why people thought Joe Biden, whatever his weaknesses were, one of the reasons why Joe Biden, when you had the argument about Joe Biden versus Bernie Sanders at the end of the nomination fight, why Joe Biden was preferable was because he was so much more palatable to down-ballot Democrats, especially in red and purple states. And you heard that from down-ballot Democrats in red and purple states over and over again. And the other is Donald Trump's approval ratings, and particularly the approval ratings and the public opinion, a reflection of what people think about his handling of this pandemic. Those are the things that are driving these Senate races, and they are they are incredibly worrying for the president. They must be incredibly worrying for the president, and they're causing him to act in ways that I think are courting utter disaster for the country.
He's looking at 30-second ads that a Christian conservative is running against him, as well as people in the Lincoln group. He's looking at his campaign manager and claiming that Brad Parscale is getting extraordinarily wealthy off of him, making all of this money despite the fact that they've spent hundreds of millions of dollars in advertising or raised that. I mean, they're doing unbelievably well raising money, but None of it is getting to where it needs to go to move those numbers. And Mika, these senators, these Republican senators who are in trouble, they understand that we went from 60 to 70,000 deaths in less than a week. And Donald Trump is trying to rush their governors to reopen their government. And they understand that while it feels good for Donald Trump to do this the first week of May, this is going to cause another healthcare crisis, which is going to cause a doubling of this economic crisis, which is going to be a disaster for their states. And yes, even a disaster for them politically. Donald Trump has made every move that's been wrong politically, economically, and most importantly, medically.
For sure.
Even, he talks about that China ban. 430,000 people got from China to America since the beginning of the pandemic, and even 40,000 people, because his ban, so-called ban from China, was so weak and toothless, 40,000 people got from China to America even after that ban was implemented. His predictions have been wrong since the beginning. On February the 22nd, he said it was one person in China, soon it would be zero. Then in February, he was still saying it was 11 people would be down to zero. Then he said it was 15 people would be down to zero. Then he said to a group of African-American leaders that it was going to go away magically. It would just go away magically. When the weather got warm, he continued to tell people when the weather got warm in April, it would go away. Of course, we found out more people ended up dying from this pandemic that he predicted would magically go away in April, then died in a 10-year hot war in Vietnam. In a 10-year hot war in Vietnam. And Mika, he still is making mistakes every day. He won't listen to his doctors. And so many politicians in his own party now fear there will be more deaths, there will be more economic chaos, and it will land at their footsteps.
There's an obsession to reopen the economy without the same obsession to actually make it safe to do so.
Without following the White House guidelines.
Yamiche.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.